thank you so much, guys, for some donations over the last few videos. Got some coffees and some Bitcoin through, and all I can say is I really appreciate it. Makes me feel very valued. It's very encouraging. So really great. Thanks so much. And you know what? It is having the desired effect, because my life is extremely busy at the moment. I'm on the edge of burnout, feeling exhausted, and all I really want to do is have a nap. But because I do feel a sense of renewed enthusiasm and responsibility for creating content because of your generous donations that are very much appreciated. So instead of having a nap, I'm going to power through and get a video out for today. This is a topic I haven't spoken much about, but I do want to speak a lot about it. I think it's very important. I think if you can try to repair, if we can try to repair and take some sort of control over the relationships between men and women, we will go a long way towards repairing the world and mitigating the issues that we're having politically and on a large scale as well. I think, a lot of these issues are reflected in the basic units in the family and the interplay between men and women these days. And so let's talk about men and women. This was inspired by a post on Instagram, and I'm just going to read out the actual story that was posted. So this is a story I found on Instagram. So it's a Reddit post or something. Okay, so about 7 years ago, I was married to a woman. This is not me, by the way, just to make that absolutely clear. This is not my personal situation whatsoever. But this is a post I'm reading, and we're going to talk about it. So about 7 years ago, I was married to a woman that I loved very much, and we had been together since we were fresh out of high school, about 14 years together. We almost never fought, and we seemed very close. I trusted her completely. We had the whole career thing going with a nice house, 2 dogs, good neighborhood, etc. One night she was out much later than usual, so I started texting and she never responded. 1:30 a.m. became 2, then 2:30, so I started calling over and over again. I had feared something went terribly wrong, like maybe she got into an accident or something. I kept calling over and over again, really starting to freak out when she accidentally answered her phone. I believe she was trying to cancel the call. She put the phone aside and I could hear her going down on some guy and talking real dirty. It put me in shock and was the worst emotional pain I had ever gone through. We were on the same phone account, so I checked her records, and she had been in communication with this guy for about a year, and they texted each other hundreds upon hundreds of times. All those nights when we were spending time on the couch or whatever, and she was texting, she was probably talking to this other guy. Meanwhile, I'm blissfully unaware. She has a cousin that was out of town, and so many of those times when she was hanging out with her cousin for the weekend, she was probably off banging this guy. My entire life went into a complete downward spiral. I just lost about everything I loved. I became so depressed that I couldn't hold my job, and I started drinking very heavily, to the point where I didn't even care if I woke up the next day. The stress caused me to lose my hair, and now I have permanent bags under my eyes. I continued drinking into this very day. And then someone replied to the post, "This kind of stuff is so traumatizing. I wish her the worst and you the best. Stay safe and keep healing." And then he responded again. His final comment: "I'm still not over it despite seeing therapists and psychiatrists. I haven't even had a girlfriend since all of that, and now I'm a complete mess. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. I still get extremely vivid flashbacks of the best moments we had together paired with that night, and it's like a dull knife slicing my soul. I still occasionally get really depressed and drunk, and then started searching around online to see what she's up to. She ended up buying out my half of the house, and we lived in an area that saw a huge boom in the housing market just a year after she bought me out, so I basically made nothing. A house that we bought for about $175,000 is now worth over $500,000 and climbing fast. From what I understand, she has renters in that house while she continues to sit on it and continues to climb in value. Meanwhile, she met a man and moved with him to a place where she always wanted to live, San Francisco. Apparently they're very happy together, and he is far more attractive than I am. Pictures of them show her with that genuine smile on her face. Apparently she has also really climbed in her career and is making six figures. Meanwhile, I live completely alone and isolated. That whole breakup basically tore all of our friendships apart. Since we were all in a big circle of friends, I live in some shitty apartment and still struggle with life to this day. Alright, that is an incredibly sad story. Really sorry, bro. You had a bad run of it. But look, there's a lot to say that I really wish anyone listening to this video to understand. The first thing is I'll give this guy a bit of a pass because that was his first love. You know, they were together since high school or whatever. And it is hard with the first person that you're committed to. You bond very strongly. And when you do break up with them, even just a normal breakup with your first love, especially if it's a long-term one, can kind of feel like the sky's falling in. And so I'll give him a little bit of leeway for the fact that it's his first love. But you know, a lot of these things are really about how you frame them and how you understand the world. Your understanding of the world is going to affect your reaction to it and how painful it has to be. And so before we dive into that particular story, I want to make a point. I would like to talk more about male-female dynamics, and I've hinted at talking about MGTOW and things like that and quote men's issues. I think the problem in general with the manosphere is that you do get a lot of these podcasters and talkers and things like that, you know, thought leaders, and really all they ever do is spread fear porn and kind of get guys like extremely black-pilled, and then they black-pill them into a state of dependence on the person who's doing the talking, in a sense. You know, they kind of say like it's so catastrophic, it is so catastrophic that, you know, they almost blackpill people to the point where they're disempowered. They're disempowered when it comes to women and relationships. I don't want that to be the case at all, and I don't think it needs to be the case. I will say I'm not in America. Where I am, there is no... If you have kids and you divorce from a marriage, there is some legal requirement that you pay a certain amount for your children. But if you've got kids, I think you should be paying for them anyway. And I know that is a grey area and that can be leveraged against you. You know, each partner has the ability to use children as a weapon against the other partner. I know that's possible, but just in principle, even if you do split and you do have kids, I think no matter which partner has the kids, I think it is still both parents' responsibility to be raising the kids financially and contributing resources to them anyway. So all I'm trying to say is I know there are some scare stories in America where you have like alimony. You can be paying for a previous wife, and if you don't, you can end up in jail. That's not the case where I am, and that's pretty blackpilling, to be honest. That is a huge worry and cause for a lot of caution, but that sort of stuff is not applicable where I am. So I'll just say that. So back to the manosphere, like I said, there's this tendency to blackpill people into helplessness and then to make them dependent on the person talking about these issues, okay? The person, whether I'm thinking, you know, clearly of people like Rollo Tomasi and whatever. Like, they kind of get this cult following because they don't do a full accounting of the situation, and they find a few truths, they wrap them up in hyperbole, and they blackpill you with these hyperinflated quote truths. Like, there is truth in a lot of what they say, but it's not the whole picture. It's not the bigger picture. It's not the whole truth, is what I'm trying to say. But what a lot of these guys will do is they zone in on a few things that are true, wrap them in a lot of hyperbole, blackpill the absolute shit out of you with the hopes of, I'm not with the hopes, but I think the effect is definitely that people become dependent on these guys. And I want the exact opposite of that. Whenever I want to talk about gender relationships, I want the exact opposite of that. I don't want you to get blackpilled. I don't want you to feel helpless, and I want you to be empowered when it comes to, obviously you're most likely a guy if you're listening to me, but some chicks will listen to this as well, and there's a lot of information for chicks that could be said about guys as well. So the whole point is, when it comes to relationships, I want to empower you. I don't want you to feel like it's hopeless, and I don't want you to feel like the world is stacked against you, because whilst I can't deny that there are issues these days that are very tough, especially for men with the sort of the rise of feminism, I'm not going to deny that. But I don't believe it is the case that the world is stacked against you, at least in my country and other countries with similar laws, which seems to be most of them. And I think, after having thought about gender relationships and having a lot of relationships myself, a lot of experience with women, and even having very honest conversations with women who aren't my partners, it's this funny thing that sometimes with people, if they feel like you understand them and you're not judging them, they open up. And they'll be very honest with you. And so I feel like I've had a lot of those sort of conversations with women too. One in particular where she broke up with an ex-fiance, and he was like super nice guy, super nice guy, and he successfully painted her as the devil. And I was talking to her just as in a situation where I could talk to her about her breakup, and I just sort of asked, so what was it, the problem? And she couldn't really describe it in these terms, but he was just being a massive bitch and would not show leadership. And she said, I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't even understand why, but I just found these behaviors so unattractive. And so he was, like I said, he was just super nice guy and would not show leadership, and she was extremely feminine, and the sort of woman who, like I said, who's very feminine and wanted that leadership, wanted that strength in a partner. And so you had this classic scenario where he's Mr. Lefty, egalitarian, super nice guy, but she's more traditional, wants the dimorphism of masculine and feminine energies, and she wanted more dominance, basically more dominance expression, a more dominant man. And she just found, even though everyone was saying to her he's such a nice guy, and society would tell her he's such a nice guy, she still found herself deeply unhappy and deeply unattracted, and that relationship ended. And it was hard for her because she explained all this to me, because I had a hint at what was going on, and I kind of hinted to her, it probably would have been good if he was a bit more decisive sometimes. And she lit up and was like, nobody gets that, nobody understands that, and people try to make me feel bad for my reaction. And I said, I don't think so at all. And so because I wasn't judging her when everyone else was, she opened up, and it was things like lack of dominance expression. Lack of dominance expression, and that's all it was. That he was just super nice guy and was not the leader. He was not her rock. He was not signaling dominance and therefore signaling strength and security for her, and she found it deeply unattractive, and she moved on. So we'll get back to old mate's story here. Like I said, it is hard when it's your first relationship. You're not going to understand these things, and it is very tough. But nevertheless, there are some dynamics you do have to understand. Some people really like egalitarian relationships, it seems. I'm highly skeptical, but just going on what they say, not because I'm not in their home behind their closed doors, so I don't have the ability to judge what they're doing. And in these hyper egalitarian relationships, my guess would be that egalitarian always just degrades into that the woman's dominant, the man's submissive, and they have a sexless marriage, and then she gets a few kids out of him, gets past the stage where the kids are old enough and she doesn't need him for any financial security at all, and just goes, well, what good are you? And then discards him. That's very, very common. But that aside, that's my intuition about a lot of these scenarios. But that aside, there are people who report, at least say they're happy with egalitarian relationships, but a lot of people aren't. And in my experience, it's pretty rare that people are happy with that scenario. And what is more successful is, we're a sexually dimorphic species. We have masculine and feminine energies, and the attraction is about the interplay. It's about the yin yang between those. It's no coincidence that the people who state that they want to destroy our civilization, one of the first things they went for is destroying gender roles and destroying understanding and appreciation of that dimorphism, that balance and chemistry between masculine and feminine energies. And so, look, here's what I'm going to have to say. Sorry, my phone's going off. Here's what I'm going to have to say about old mate. And like I said at the start, I will give him a big consideration for the fact that it was his first straight out of high school relationship, and you don't really understand these things. This is the sort of thing a lot of people have to learn through pain. But if you're in a relationship and you're listening to this and you're a smart person, you can learn from listening. I would like you to learn it through these videos. But all right, this is the central point. The fact that his life was destroyed by losing her is probably one of the things that made him lose her, if not the biggest thing. Okay? I'll say that again. The fact that he is emotionally so damaged and just like, okay, no matter what happens, getting cheated on is always going to hurt. But at some point, okay, it's always going to hurt. But at some point, you need to pick yourself up and find a new path in your life and keep going with your mission. You need to have a mission. You need to have a reason to your life. And so if your life is destroyed when you lose the woman in your life, it's really kind of hinting to the possibility that the woman that you had was your mission in life. And that is just such an inversion. That is not cool. And that is going to be one of the things that will drive women running. As I mentioned in my first story, there is, as we talk on this channel about cognitively masculine and cognitively feminine brains. Sorry, I'm actually exhausted, so that's why I'm slurring my words a little bit. So forgive me if I trip over my words a little bit. I am pretty tired, but we'll still get through it, and I think there'll still be value in this. So we talk about cog males and cog femmes. There is a division of labor. These things came about because there is a division of labor, and that's when basically a division of labor is when different people specialize. You go, okay, you over there, Billy, you get really good at doing A, and I'll get really good at doing B. Instead of both of us doing A and B half-half, if you become a specialist in A, I'll become a specialist in B. And then together, the sum of us, both being specialists at these different jobs, is going to be more productive than if we were both half as good at both jobs. Do you know what I mean? Specializing in certain things, you work together to create an outcome that's bigger than the sum of its parts. And so men and women have evolved a division of labor, and politics is overwhelmingly the realm of men, because men evolved to care about things at larger scales and longer time frames, and women's demands of men are provision and protection. They want us to produce the resources and keep them safe, and to be able to protect them while they have kids, while they do what they specialize at, which is having kids, raising kids. I've got a kid on the way, and I can tell you now that growing a kid and raising kids, for women, it is exhausting, and it's a big job for them. And so it's almost unfair. It is almost unfair, and women are apparently unhappier in these modern times than they were in the past. It is unfair on women to have this specialization of like growing and caring for babies and things, but then expecting them to be egalitarian with men in other areas of production and provision and protection. So your man's job, and you think about a tribe. Think about a tribe of people. The men patrol the perimeter, and the perimeter could be a physical perimeter. It can be a time dimension perimeter. We patrol the future. We patrol the perimeters of space and time, scanning for threats to keep the inner circle of our tribe safe, which is the women and the children, while the women do their thing, socializing with other women and raising the children, having the children, raising the children. So we've talked about women, living in a social world. They evolved to live in a social world because it's not their job to patrol the perimeter. The reason why is because women are so reproductively valuable. I don't want to get off on another tangent, but I will say quickly, women are the bottleneck of reproduction. Imagine 2 islands. One island has 100 men and 1,000 women. Imagine that. 100 men and 1,000 women. So 10 women per every man. And then another island has 100 women and 1,000 men. Which population can grow quicker? Well, the one with more women can grow quicker, because one man can impregnate many women, but the reverse is not true. And so once again, we evolve these instincts out of the economics of our behavior and survival. It's pretty obvious when you think about it, but we evolve these instincts that women are valuable, and so you wouldn't put them out there patrolling the perimeter where it's dangerous. You wouldn't do that. So we keep the women safe so that they can have our babies, and we go and patrol the borders of space and time. And so a lot of women, especially feminine women, the more feminine the woman, the more this is true, I think. There are some women who are not very feminine and a bit more lesbian, and they're a bit more gender ambiguous, and they're but the more feminine the woman, the more feminine her emotional demands, and that will be that she wants the man to be the rock, to be the leader, to be her protector. And in these modern times, it's not like you have to be the sole earner, but you do need to probably pick up more than half of the slack. And even if she works and earns, it's more, she wants to have the ability that it doesn't even equally fall on her shoulders. You probably need to be earning enough so that she can at least drop back to part-time, so that she can balance some income with her family commitments and kids and things like that. I mean, preferable that she doesn't have to work, like that'd be ideal. But even if you don't earn enough for that to be the case, the fact that you earn more than her is pretty important. And because it's a signal that you are fulfilling that masculine role of protecting and providing. And so if a woman is looking for you for strength, for leadership, and to be her rock, then how can you be that if when she leaves, your life is over? Do you understand what I'm saying? If your life ends and has no direction and becomes directionless and meaningless, and you drink yourself into an early grave and depression because she left, how are you ever her leader or her rock? How are you ever supposed to make her feel safe? It's an inversion. It's if you were happy when she was there and when she left, your life was over. It meant that she was keeping you safe. It meant that she was your rock. She was the leader. She was calling the shots. And that is an inversion of that masculine and feminine energy. You see what I'm saying? And I'll say it again. I'll give this guy a pass because you don't necessarily understand these things when you're a young man, especially not a teenager, and then you're with someone and it all coasts along and it's your first love and you're cool. You don't have the dating experience, and you don't have the relationship breakups that probably prompt you to understand these dynamics. But we can still take something away from this. I've actually got a few articles where you point out the same thing. I'm going to revisit this topic a lot, but the point is, she left and his life was over, but that's part of the problem. Now, I've got I've got a beautiful wife with my first kid on the way, and she's an amazing wife. You have to always prioritize your self-respect. And even though my wife is amazing, there was a situation when we were very, very first dating, and we had a bit of a long distance thing. And look, one of the great things that I learned from Kurt Doolittle is articulating reciprocity, and understanding that as a moral principle that I can use in my life. And so when I was first dating my wife, she lived about an hour away, and I didn't want to signal to her that I was more into her than she was to me by being the only one who ever drove to her place. Now, I worked for myself and had a more flexible timetable. I've always had a more flexible timetable. And so I was able to drive to her a little bit more because she was quite busy than her drive to me. But it got to the point very, very quickly, and I'm like, I'm not going to signal to you that you don't have to make an effort ever. I'm not going to signal that to you. So I said, well, we live apart, and she moved in with me eventually to begin with, and that was great. Really solved that problem. But she said, oh, what if I don't? And what if I don't move in with you? And I said, well, if you don't move with me, because she was complaining about driving to my place, right? She was complaining about the distance. And I said, okay, well, move in. We were serious. I've known her for a long time, so we were serious, and the relationship was going really well. But she said, well, what if I don't move in with you? And I said, well, if you don't move in with me, then our only other option is to keep long distance and traveling to each other's houses. But I said, but here's the thing, I'm not going to do that more than you do. Like, I'll be a little bit flexible, but I'm ultimately not going to be the one only doing that, because I will take that as a signal that you're taking me for granted and that you don't value me. And I said to her, even though I was like absolutely head over heels in love with her, I said, she said, well, what if I don't? What if I can't? I said, well, I'm not prepared to do another long distance thing for very long, because I just think it's a massive pain in the ass, and I'm at this stage in my life where I just can't be bothered with this unnecessary drama of long distance. So, and if you don't want to drive down to see me, well, I'll probably find someone else, because I'm not going to be in a situation with someone who doesn't value me. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, yeah, like, you have to act. You have to do something, and if you don't, I'll find someone else. And this is a girl that, like I said, I'm married now and is having my kid. But it wasn't me telling her what to do. It was me saying, well, you have to put in equal effort to me. You have to do something. You can't let me do all the work, because that's a signal that I like you more than you like me, and that's not going to fly. I'm not going to have a relationship under those conditions. And I was prepared. I told her, I said, well, look, at the end of the day, if you don't value me enough to do something, then I'll find someone who does value me that much. Because I was like, well, that's what my self-respect demands, and that's what I deserve, is someone who sees the value in me and is prepared to act on that. And of course, it was all just a bluff for her, and she did. She moved in, and everything's been great ever since. But that was a shit test. That was a shit test where she's like, okay, well, what if I don't? I said, well, you know what? If you don't, then you can tell me that you value me all you like, but if your actions are not going to reflect that reality, then like I said to you, I'll read your actions more than I hear your words. And so the most likely scenario is that I'll end up finding someone who actually does value me. And she obviously valued me a lot, because it was all just a bluff. But the point is, it was testing the waters for her. It was testing my self-respect. And it worked out really well. Every time a woman wants to test your self-respect, you have to have that self-respect, because without that, she doesn't want you anyway. Do you understand? And so women look to you for leadership and to be the rock more often than they don't. And I don't need to know every couple in the world, but I'll just say that even though there might be some other people that aren't like that, they're the exception rather than the rule. But generally, and especially with more feminine women, they look to you to be the rock. And so if you're not going to do that, you're inverting the masculine and feminine energies. And it's not going to be long before she finds someone else. It's that simple. Let me put it in an analogy as well. Part 2 of this video, I'll put it in an analogy. Say that you're a famous sports person and you work on a famous footballer or whatever, and you work on a team, and say you're their star player, and they go, okay, well, you have to do this, or you'll get kicked off the team. And you're like, well, if I got kicked off the team, I'd probably get picked up by the next team, and I could probably actually renegotiate a higher salary anyway, so meh, who cares? If you create that much value that should they want to kick you off the team, it's probably worse for them than you, then you're in a position of security, right? But if you only just scraped in to get on that team, and you feel like being on that team is, God's gift to you and a blessing, and you might even have some imposter syndrome and doubt that you even deserve to really be there, and you're just holding on for dear life to stay in this amazing team. Well, the moment anything bad happens, you're going to be the first one to cut, because whether it's just a signal or whether it's actually true, you're low value. Okay? So the same one to part 2 of this video would be, obviously the woman is the team and you're the player, being you as the guy, right? That's the analogy. So part 2 of this, if you do ever find yourself in this situation where you have been cheated on, this ties into what I was saying before. You always have to prioritize your self-respect, because without it, you are nothing. Nobody wants you anyway. You know what I mean? There's no universe. There is no possibility where a woman challenges your self-esteem and your self-respect, and you choose her over your self-respect, and then you have a happy life or a happy relationship. That is not even possible. That's not, in no version of this universe is that ever going to work out. You have to have the self-respect, because it's a signal of value. It's a signal of value. Cognitively feminine people live in a social world, and so what you signal is extremely important to them and to their opinions of you. And so the other thing I would say, like this poor old schmuck in the opening story, the way you should deal with this, look, cheating is going to hurt no matter what. That's terrible. But the way you should A, insure yourself against it happening, and B, the way you should deal with it should you ever be in that situation anyway, is that you need to be a high status and high value enough man that you can just move on with your life. You know what I mean? And so that's the analogy of the high value star footballer, and the team captain's like, well, we're going to kick you off the team. He's like, oh, well, I'll just get another team. No big deal. And you know what? It might even be better than this one. Right? The analogy there is you're like, okay, look, my wife that I love, did the wrong thing by me, and that's horrible. And my self-respect demands that this relationship is ended. But there are a lot of people out there, and, I'll be happy again. That's what you'd have to do. But this guy in the story, his life was over. He drank himself into depression. And, when you're drunk and depressed and unfit, that's going to have that flow-on effect. He talked about his losing out his house and his career and everything. Well, yeah, if your life just goes completely downhill and you look like a bum and you're an alcoholic because of this, well, everything in your life is going to suffer. Everything in your life is going to suffer because you let this breakup define your entire existence. You see what I'm saying? And so you need to create enough value, and this goes for men and women, enough value that should the wrong thing ever happen to you, you can land on your feet and keep going. And you need to have a mission that is not your partner. You need to have a personality that is not your partner. You need to have goals in your life that is not centered around your partner. Another thing when I met my wife is that I decided I wanted to have a family and have kids. And even though I love her and she's an amazing wife and will be an amazing mother, if she didn't want that, I wouldn't give up that goal to have been with her, I would have found someone else to achieve that goal with. You see what I'm saying? Whereas I feel like the guy in the story, his goals would have been defined by his wife. She would have been the leader. And because when she left, he had no more goals. He had no more leadership. He didn't even have any positivity with life. Okay, look, getting cheated on really, really sucks. But the way you ensure yourself against it and the way you deal with it is to be a high enough value person that you can land on your feet, and you need to have life goals that you're pursuing regardless of your wife or girlfriend or whatever. And you need to stay on that path. You need to stay on your journey, regardless of what your wife's doing. And ironically, that is the optimum dynamic between men and women, that the man can, if he has a mission in life, if he has self-esteem, if he has enough value that he feels in his bones that he could find plenty of other women that would love him, then that is everything you need to signal to a woman to keep her happy anyway. You know, that you're high value, you can provide that protection and security, you can provide that leadership, and that you respect yourself. So, look, this is the sort of thing that I could talk about time and time again. I don't want this particular video to be too long, but I think it's important. The gender dynamics between men and women are important. I don't want you to get black-pilled, because I think that as men, there is so much that we can do which is so highly effective on women. So much we can do to correct our approach, our mindset, and our lives. And these things have such profound, almost involuntary effects on women that no matter what the world is stacking up against us, you can't change these hardwired human instincts. And so there is so much that, should we just understand how they work, you can have so much power. You can have so much power. And that's what I want to do. I don't get blackpilled, but learn from this story that if your life falls apart because your woman walks away, then that's probably why she walked away. Do you understand? And let me know any comments or questions or anything else you want me to talk about with this. We'll come back to this topic a lot. I've got a few articles to cover about it as well. But look, bros, don't be black-pilled at all. I know for an absolute fact, there are so many... Look, nobody's perfect. Any human being, and especially a lot of women, they can have difficulties, but I know for a fact in my bones, there are so many beautiful women out there. I know from talking to them, I know from knowing in my life, there are so many lovely women out there who would love a decent guy. You know, so don't listen to your Rolos and don't get black-pilled about how every woman's out there to get you. It's simply not the case, and I will help you see that. And so yeah, hit me up any questions you might have. Once again, your donations, your generous donations, I absolutely appreciate. They had the desired effect in that I really just wanted to have a nap. I'm tired this week, I'm exhausted, but I'm still here putting out some content because I feel that responsibility now. So thank you very much. Hit me up any questions you've got. I'll see you in the next one.